When I first started homeschooling my now 6-year-old son, it was difficult. It was quite hard, and it still sometimes can be. But then this year I started homeschooling my daughter. My gosh, the difference is just insane. I have just realized that boys are different to girls. And so today I wanted to share about those differences and give you guys some tips on what I've learned about homeschooling boys. First tip I have for you is to have frequent breaks. Now, how long these breaks are is up to you. In my own household, I find longer breaks don't work very well because he gets into the flow of playing and then he won't want to stop playing to stop and do some schoolwork. I like keeping the breaks pretty short, about 10, 15 to 30 minutes max, and then I will have those frequent breaks in between 1 or 2 subjects throughout the day, depending on our regular homeschool flow. It breaks up the day and it makes him feel like school isn't this really long, tedious, all-day thing, because even if we sat there for 2 hours straight, we know 2 hours in the 24-hour day is nothing, but to a child who doesn't really comprehend time yet, it's very long for him. So since I have implemented these frequent breaks, our homeschool days have gone a lot smoother. The next thing is to either explain or visually show them, like on a graph, what the outline of the day is going to look like. So for me, I do follow a regular flow every day of the school week. However, every day does come with its slight differences. At breakfast, when we first sit down for our first morning time, I let the kids know the outline of the day. It usually goes pretty smoothly from there. And honestly, the most important thing to him is what is the last subject that I am doing today, because then he is really focused on getting his work done quickly. And even when I implement certain breaks sometimes, he will just say, "No, mummy, I want to do my work now," because in his mind that means that he has more time and he can play much sooner. Now, the next thing, I'm sure most homeschool moms already buy this when they first start out, but I didn't until a few months ago, and that is to use a timer. I bought my timer off Temu, I think it is. It has been a game changer. Again, with this concept of focusing, I just find that when he has a visual aspect of seeing how long his lesson is going to be, he realizes, oh, this isn't going to take literally all day. Once this timer goes off, I get to get up and play, or I get to move on to my next subject. I set 20 minutes on the timer maximum for our largest subjects, which include mathematics and our reading time, and then our language arts. So those are the 3 longest subjects that we do in the day. Other things like science and art and all of that, they only go for like 10, 15 minutes, depending on how long it takes to get the task done or the focus level of my son. I find that since using the timer, it's also made me focus a lot more too. So if you struggle with getting distracted like I often do, then that can probably help solve both of your guys' time issue. The next thing is to implement daily outside time. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to leave the house necessarily, but even the backyard, if you're able to get your son outside and running, kicking a ball, jumping on the trampoline, just doing anything other than sitting at the table, it's going to burn off a lot more energy, and he's probably going to come inside and be okay with sitting down at the table and doing a bit of math or whatever you have planned for that subject, opposed to him just sitting there all day and then spending the rest of the day inside. I like rewarding him with going to the playground or going to the beach or just going to the shops, because that way he's getting his movement out. He's able to run around and play with his siblings in another environment that isn't inside our home. I'm sure you get cabin fever, I do too, and so when it comes to our children, especially boys who are made to move with so much energy, I feel like their cabin fever is just way bigger than we realize. My son is at the age where unfortunately he has slowly gotten into Xbox games. For your child, maybe they like playing the iPad or the PlayStation or whatever. The point is screen time. Now, if it was up to me, there would be no screens in the house, but I am married and I of course respect my husband's leisurely time and how he spends his time. Because of that, my son, of course, who admires his father and wants to be like him, has learned to love video games too, which is fine. What I have done to eliminate the battle of him arguing and wanting to play the game instead of doing math, of course he's going to want to play his Xbox, is I have set a time for when screen time can start in the day, and it's the same time every day of the school week. It probably took about a week, but he learned very quickly to stop even asking when he can play his games, because the time is exactly the same every single day, and he is not allowed to turn on the TV or touch the Xbox until 5 p.m. Call it manipulation, but in that hour of Xbox time that he actually has, it's honestly way less than that, because it's not just him using the TV. He has to share it with 4 other siblings, and they need to work out together when to watch their shows and when he can play his game. So the trick to that is dinner is usually at around 6 to 6:30, and that is our trigger to turn all the screens off and sit down as a family to eat dinner. It works perfectly, and so if you have a child who, you know, they don't want to do their schoolwork because they are so tempted by their screens, then try to set a time that they are allowed to use it in the day. And my advice would be to set it as late as you can into the afternoon, so that naturally they have more minimal time to be on there. Kids thrive off routine, and my son in particular really likes knowing what to expect throughout the day. When he wakes up, he knows that as he eats breakfast, that is the time that we start our morning time. And then he is free to go and get dressed, he makes his bed, and he can go play until the next time he asks for food. Him asking for food is actually the next trigger, and the good thing is that my son gets hungry really, really quick. And then he knows that that is the trigger to start our second block of school. It's taken us a little while to sort out a rhythm and a routine that suits not only me and him, but also the whole family. But we have finally nailed it, and trust me, especially if you have a new baby or if you have toddlers and younger kids you need to entertain, in the beginning it can feel really overwhelming and frustrating, but I promise that if you stick to it and just keep experimenting, eventually you will figure out a flow that works really well for your family, and then your school time with your sons is going to be a lot more enjoyable for the both of you. Number 7 is to understand that boys likely want to use their hands. So this again is following the concept of realizing that boys are not the same as girls. As much as the world wants to try to convince you that they are just not the same. They are wired very differently to us. In the beginning of this video, I kind of compared my children against one another. I'm not trying to do in a negative way. I'm just trying to contrast how they are so different. My daughter is so easy to teach with my own personal teaching style. The kids are home. It's probably going to get a bit noisy as they come in, but don't worry, we'll figure it out. My son loves games, whereas my daughter will happily sit there and color in for an hour and do her math facts. Like, she just thrives off bookwork.
Got this, lollies, popcorn, snacks, soft drinks.
So naughty.
I got your frozen drink too. Because you're working hard and I've got to spoil my hard work and waiting.
For me, I find that my daughters, I'm currently teaching one in preschool and the other one is in kindergarten. They will sit there and do as I say. There is no battle, there is no fidgeting. They can focus really well just because they don't have as much energy as my son. And what I have found really works well with my son is he becomes really engaged and focused on his work whenever there is games implemented. So we do use the Good and the Beautiful language arts. Thankfully, in that and in their math curriculum, which we also use, they do have games quite frequently throughout the curriculum. Now, there is a bit of debate whether children actually learn through games. In my mind, I don't see how they wouldn't if they are actually engaging and focused and having fun. But apparently there is a bit of evidence out there that games isn't the best way to learn. That is for you to figure out for yourself, but I just find that as long as my son is engaged in what we are doing, in my mind, he's learning. We play Monopoly, we play Risk, which is a geography game. We also play Uno, you know, card games, memory. All of those things make it really fun. Try to make your lessons as fun as possible is the moral of this TED Talk. And let's go into tip number 8. This one is really important, and there's a lot of homeschooling podcasters who I respect, and they all recommend to go to your husband for advice when you are having frustrations with homeschooling your son. Boys love their dads. It's just natural for a son. His daddy is always going to be his number one hero. Of course, he loves us, but I do find that in our own home, I am definitely the authority figure because I am with him all of the time. So he often views me as the boring, you know, hard mum, and then daddy is fun. And so it can be really easy to get into this rut with each other, feeling really unmotivated and frustrated in our school life. And whenever these issues come up, or if I just find that my son is just not making the connections in his brain with certain concepts that we are learning, I will go to my husband and ask him for advice. What would he change? What would he recommend on how to better teach my son? At the end of the day, your husband probably thinks and understands your son way more than you do, purely based on the fact that he's a male just like your boy is. My second to last tip is to put them into sports. This is controversial, and I know a lot of homeschooling mums don't value sports, but in my opinion, I do find that sportsmanship, more so for boys, or at least my boys, is really beneficial to your sons. Boys love competition. They obviously love running around. It helps their gross motor skills. It also helps their team building skills, and it puts them out of their comfort zone. He actually really surprised me when he first started sport. He didn't know anyone. He got out there. Everyone else was already friends because they knew each other from school, and that's often the case with any sports club. You're gonna have your group cliques, but because of that, it forced him to feel a bit uncomfortable. Obviously, he needs to learn how to make friends outside of his siblings. They're all 14 months apart, so they're very close, and it's very easy for them to stick together when we are in larger group settings. And so putting him alone into a sport, I find, has been really beneficial for him. Whereas my daughter, she's extremely sporty and talented when it comes to her physical abilities. To this day, she still has not played because she will just cry, purely based on the fact that she is in an uncomfortable and a new situation. It's really overwhelming for her. So we are walking her through these games. We are not pulling her out because we want her to learn how to overcome this challenge she is currently going through. But when it comes to my sons, they thrive off it. They love it. He looks forward to it every day. And on the days that he does have training or a game, he is way more motivated to do his school because he knows that he has that to look forward to. If you have been contemplating putting them in sports, I say go for it. If it doesn't work out, or if their behavior or if their friend groups aren't right for your son, then you can always pull them out and explain why. And the very last tip I have for homeschooling your sons is to use the first few years as experimenting and learning more about your child and learning about yourself as well. When you first start homeschooling any child, it's very new and confronting. You realize that certain things that you thought were true about yourself are probably not true. For me, I always knew I was extremely impatient, but through the Lord's strength, I have only grown in that way, and our homeschool days are now really, really enjoyable. It took us a while to get to this place. It took me a long time to figure out how my son likes learning. He loves learning through games, giving him frequent breaks. Like, all of this has been a learning curve. Our homeschool days are now really, really beautiful and smooth and fun. So don't feel discouraged if you are thinking about homeschooling next year and then things don't work out the way that you wanted them to. I promise, if you stick to it, I promise if you have genuine, valid reasons to homeschool, that it will get better and you will find a lot of fun and joy and growth in homeschooling your children, especially your sons. Boys are such a joy to teach. They teach you so much about how men think in general. I guess a bonus tip is to realize that your son is a male and men need respect. Women need love in order to feel good in relationships, and while your son may be a little boy, depending how old he is still a male. When I speak down to my son, or if I get frustrated at him or say something nasty or my tone is off, I guess this is true for anyone, but I just think especially for boys, his motivation and spirit gets really crushed. I think that respect is really important to them. So if there is something you take away from this video, maybe that would be probably my #1 tip, is to try to speak to your son in a very respectful tone. Give grace when he doesn't just get things like that. Expect friction and debate sometimes when it comes to your sons, especially when they are young. They are so young and precious. It's new for them, it's new for you. Try to enjoy the first few years of homeschooling because they are really precious. Your son will eventually get better at sitting at the table and doing his work. It just takes a lot of time. If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, I would love if you subscribe, because I do make videos all about homeschooling on this channel. I am thinking about doing a few day in the lives and homemaking on here too. Let me know in the comments below what is one thing that you are going to implement from now on. I would love to know. Let me know how it goes as well. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.